The chemical procurement orders appeared routine. Laboratory-grade reagents, industrial solvents, precision scales, filtration equipment, materials used across dozens of legitimate pharmaceutical and research applications. Standard quantities through established chemical supply companies. Proper end-user certifications. Documentation claiming academic research institutions and licensed pharmaceutical operations as purchasers. Except pattern analysis had identified that these specific chemicals, in these specific combinations and quantities, were precursors for synthesizing fentanyl and novel synthetic opioids with potency hundreds of times greater than heroin. Intelligence indicated the materials had been systematically acquired by 23 shell companies over 11 months, then consolidated at clandestine manufacturing facilities, producing finished narcotics for distribution across North American markets. Right now, 114 kilograms of pure fentanyl and fentanyl analogs sat in storage facilities, cut and packaged into individual doses totaling 800,000 street-level units. Distribution timeline: 48 hours. Target markets: metropolitan areas across 12 states where existing opioid addiction created demand for products that users would not realize were exponentially more lethal than substances they had previously consumed. Projected casualties based on historical overdose data and increased potency: minimum 2,000 deaths within 60 days of distribution, with another 5,000 requiring emergency medical intervention for non-fatal overdoses. ATF Trigger had 2 days to locate manufacturing facilities, identify distribution networks, intercept finished product before street release, and dismantle an operation that represented the most sophisticated synthetic opioid production network ever discovered in federal law enforcement history. The investigation originated 16 months earlier, when medical examiners in 3 cities reported unusual toxicology findings in overdose deaths. The victims had consumed what they believed was heroin or prescription opioids, but laboratory analysis revealed novel fentanyl analogs not previously encountered in forensic testing. The molecular structures were similar to known synthetic opioids, but included chemical modifications designed to evade detection in standard drug testing and potentially avoid classification under existing controlled substance laws. DEA Laboratory Division determined the compounds were intentionally engineered derivatives with potency exceeding standard fentanyl by factors of 3 to 10. These were sophisticated chemistry producing designer narcotics optimized for maximum effect while complicating law enforcement detection. ATF coordinated with DEA Diversion Control Division to trace the chemical precursors required for synthesis of these novel compounds. Unlike heroin production, which requires opium poppy cultivation, synthetic opioids are manufactured entirely from chemicals that can be legally purchased and shipped internationally. The investigation focused on identifying procurement patterns that would reveal systematic acquisition of precursor chemicals beyond legitimate research or pharmaceutical applications. Financial analysis revealed 23 entities with suspicious purchasing patterns. Chemicals including acetic anhydride, piperidine, and aniline derivatives. Cross-referencing revealed shell companies at same addresses, funded through same offshore accounts, controlled by individuals with no verifiable scientific credentials. The shell companies had spent $4.7 million over 11 months acquiring chemicals that, when properly combined, could produce hundreds of kilograms of synthetic opioids. Initial procurement began with small orders that would not trigger regulatory scrutiny. As chemical suppliers approved their accounts and established trust, order volumes increased. By month 9 of operations, the network was receiving monthly chemical shipments, sufficient to produce 12 to 15 kilograms of finished fentanyl and analogs, quantities representing hundreds of thousands of street doses. But chemicals alone do not create finished narcotics. Synthesis requires specialized knowledge, controlled laboratory conditions, precision equipment, and sophisticated chemistry beyond typical drug manufacturing. ATF investigators needed to identify where synthesis was occurring, who possessed the expertise to conduct advanced organic chemistry, and where finished products were being stored before distribution. The breakthrough came from analyzing shipping addresses for chemical deliveries. Most shell companies listed office addresses or mail forwarding services, but physical deliveries required actual receiving locations. Cross-referencing delivery addresses against property records identified 17 industrial facilities leased to companies claiming chemical storage or research operations. Surveillance of these locations detected security measures inconsistent with simple storage. Electronic access controls, 24-hour occupancy, chemical vapor filtration systems, and power consumption patterns suggesting active laboratory operations. Federal prosecutors secured warrants for the first facility based on chemical diversion violations and false end-user certifications. Entry teams discovered a complete clandestine pharmaceutical laboratory, industrial-scale synthesis equipment, capable of processing multiple chemical reactions simultaneously, precision temperature controls for managing reaction conditions, vacuum distillation apparatus for purifying products, analytical instruments for testing compound purity and potency, and storage vaults holding 18 kilograms of finished fentanyl in powder form, plus precursor chemicals for producing an additional 60 kilograms. The facility operated with pharmaceutical industry professionalism. Laboratory notebooks documented synthesis procedures with detailed chemical reaction parameters. Quality control testing verified product purity exceeded 98%, and packaging operations prepared finished narcotics in quantities ranging from wholesale kilogram blocks to individual street doses. This was not crude drug manufacturing in makeshift conditions. It was industrial production, using sophisticated chemistry and professional laboratory practices. But the facility's production capacity created alarming projections. Equipment specifications indicated monthly output potential of 15 to 20 kilograms of finished fentanyl. The facility had been operational for at least 9 months based on utility records and chemical procurement timelines. If operating at capacity, total production could exceed 150 kilograms. Only 18 kilograms were recovered on site. Over 100 kilograms were unaccounted for, already distributed to wholesale traffickers or stored at unknown locations awaiting distribution. Interrogation of personnel arrested at the laboratory revealed fragmented operational details. The facility was staffed by chemists with advanced degrees recruited specifically for synthetic opioid production. They were compensated far beyond legitimate research salaries. Monthly payments ranging from $30,000 to $50,000 to conduct synthesis operations and train additional personnel in production techniques. The chemists acknowledged their work but claimed limited knowledge of distribution networks or final street deployment of the narcotics they manufactured. However, encrypted communications seized during the raid contained production schedules, shipment confirmations, and quality specifications from recipients of finished product. Analysis of these communications revealed the network's structure. The raided facility was one of 6 production laboratories, operating across 4 states. Each facility specialized in different stages of the synthesis process, or produced different fentanyl analogs, creating compartmentalization that would limit damage from any single facility compromise, while maximizing overall production efficiency. Financial investigation tracked money flows between facilities and to downstream distributors. Over 11 months, the manufacturing network had generated $42 million in revenue from wholesale distribution of synthetic opioids to trafficking organizations across North America. These revenues indicated the operation was supplying multiple major trafficking networks, not simply producing for single distributors. The network functioned as a wholesale pharmaceutical manufacturer, serving the illegal drug market with the same business model as legitimate pharmaceutical companies serving legal medicine. Communications analysis identified the distribution infrastructure. Finished narcotics moved from laboratories to regional storage facilities operated by trafficking organizations. From storage, products were distributed to street-level dealers through established narcotics networks in major metropolitan areas. But the communications revealed a critical detail. A major distribution event was scheduled in 48 hours. Multiple laboratories had coordinated production to stockpile finished product for simultaneous release across all regional markets served by the network. The communications specified quantities: 114 kilograms of pure fentanyl and fentanyl analogs, already cut with adulterants and packaged into 800,000 individual street doses. The products were staged at 4 regional distribution centers, ready for transfer to street-level trafficking organizations serving 12 metropolitan areas. Once distributed to street dealers, the narcotics would be in users' hands within 24 hours, creating hundreds of thousands of consumption events across dozens of cities in a coordinated flood of synthetic opioids into markets already experiencing opioid addiction crisis. Medical analysis assessed probable outcomes. Fentanyl doses measured in micrograms can be lethal. The novel analogs were more potent than standard fentanyl. Historical data showed 2 to 4% mortality rates when users unknowingly consumed fentanyl. 800,000 doses, conservative projections. Minimum 2,000 deaths within 60 days. Upper estimates reaching 5,000 deaths. Non-fatal overdoses would further strain medical systems. Emergency medical services would respond to an estimated 5,000 overdose calls requiring naloxone administration and hospitalization. Medical facilities in affected cities would face surge capacity challenges from simultaneous overdose admissions. The coordinated distribution across 12 metropolitan areas meant no single city's resources could assist others. Every jurisdiction would face crisis-level overdose events simultaneously, maximizing strain on emergency response and healthcare systems. Timeline verification through multiple intelligence sources confirmed the 48-hour distribution window. Communications between laboratories and distribution centers indicated final quality testing was complete, packaging was finished, and transport was scheduled. Wholesale buyers had confirmed their orders and prepared payment transfers. Street-level dealers were positioned to receive product and had already notified their customer networks that new supplies would be available within 72 hours. If ATF Trigger delayed interdiction beyond the scheduled transfer from distribution centers to street-level organizations, the narcotics would disperse into hundreds of individual dealer networks across 12 cities. Recovery would require identifying individual dealers, obtaining warrants for each location, executing hundreds of separate operations, a process requiring months while thousands of doses circulated and created overdose casualties. Federal coordination expanded to include DEA field divisions in all affected regions, FBI task forces targeting major trafficking organizations, state and local law enforcement in the 12 metropolitan areas targeted for distribution, and emergency medical services preparing for potential overdose surge if interdiction was not completely successful. Intelligence sharing protocols ensured all agencies had real-time access to developing information about laboratory locations, distribution centers, and trafficking organization structures. Operational planning addressed the complexity of simultaneous multi-state operations. All 6 manufacturing laboratories required immediate shutdown to prevent continued production. All 4 regional distribution centers needed seizure to recover the 800,000 doses already packaged. All major wholesale buyers required arrest to dismantle the distribution network. Timing was critical. Operations had to execute simultaneously to prevent alert to uncompromised facilities and dispersal of narcotics to backup locations. 36 hours before the scheduled distribution event, ATF Trigger executed coordinated operations across 9 states. Entry teams moved simultaneously against all 6 laboratories at 0500 hours, selected to catch personnel during shift changes when security would be reduced. Federal agents raided all 4 distribution centers within the same hour, securing facilities before wholesale transfers could begin. Arrest teams detained 47 individuals identified as major wholesale buyers and trafficking organization leadership. All 6 manufacturing laboratories were shut down completely. Total seized precursor chemicals, sufficient to produce an additional 240 kilograms of synthetic opioids. Equipment was dismantled and destroyed. Laboratory notebooks and synthesis protocols were secured to prevent reproduction of the manufacturing process. Chemists arrested at facilities provided expertise details under cooperation agreements. Information used to identify and prosecute upstream chemical suppliers who had knowingly facilitated the network's precursor acquisitions. All 4 distribution centers were secured before any wholesale transfers occurred. Total seized finished narcotics: 114 kilograms of pure fentanyl and analogs, exactly matching intelligence projections. The narcotics were in final packaging as 800,000 individual doses ready for street distribution. Not one dose reached wholesale buyers. Not one dose entered street-level dealer networks. Not one dose reached users who would have consumed substances they believed were heroin or prescription opioids, but were actually lethal synthetic compounds. Additional locations beyond the 6 identified laboratories were compromised through intelligence gathered during initial raids. Communications analysis revealed 3 backup production facilities in various stages of activation, 2 chemical storage warehouses holding precursor stockpiles, and 7 safe houses used by trafficking organization leadership. Operations against these locations yielded an additional 43 kilograms of finished narcotics and enough precursor chemicals to produce another 120 kilograms, bringing total prevented production to over 300 kilograms of synthetic opioids that never reached markets. Arrests totaled 132 individuals across all operations: chemists who conducted synthesis operations, laboratory technicians who operated equipment and conducted quality testing, facility operators who provided secure locations and operational security, logistics coordinators who managed precursor acquisitions and finished product distribution, trafficking organization leadership who controlled wholesale distribution networks, and financial operators who laundered proceeds through cryptocurrency and offshore accounts. Federal prosecution resulted in convictions under continuing criminal enterprise statutes, drug manufacturing and trafficking charges, and chemical diversion violations. The 6 chemists who led synthesis operations received sentences ranging from 25 to 40 years for their roles in producing narcotics that would have killed thousands. Laboratory operators and technicians received 15 to 30 years. Trafficking organization leadership received sentences from 30 to 50 years, with several receiving life terms under career criminal enhancements for prior drug trafficking convictions. Asset forfeiture operations seized $47 million traced through cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore banking networks. All manufacturing equipment, laboratory facilities, distribution centers, and vehicles used in operations were seized. Properties were liquidated, with proceeds used to fund overdose prevention programs and treatment facilities in communities that would have been targeted by the network's distribution operations. Forensic analysis of seized narcotics revealed the sophistication and lethality of the network's products. Chemical testing confirmed multiple novel fentanyl analogs, each with unique molecular structures designed to evade detection in routine drug testing. Potency testing showed compounds ranging from 3 to 11 times more potent than pharmaceutical-grade fentanyl. Some analogs included chemical modifications that could complicate naloxone reversal of overdoses, potentially reducing effectiveness of the primary emergency treatment for opioid overdoses. Packaging analysis revealed deceptive marketing mimicking heroin, prescription pills, and cocaine. Appearances misleading users about contents and potency. Some packages included logos suggesting pharmaceutical legitimacy, This deception would ensure users consumed synthetic opioids without awareness, eliminating opportunity to adjust dosing. Casualty projection analysis quantified what the interdiction prevented: 800,000 individual doses distributed across 12 metropolitan areas. Conservative mortality estimate of 2,000 deaths within 60 days based on historical fentanyl overdose rates. Upper estimates reaching 5,000 deaths if doses concentrated in populations with low opioid tolerance. An additional 5,000 non-fatal overdoses requiring emergency medical intervention, hospitalization, and long-term treatment for complications. Medical infrastructure impact assessment revealed crisis potential. The 12 targeted areas had combined emergency capacity for approximately 300 simultaneous overdose responses. 5,000 overdoses over 60 days would exceed capacity by 15 to 1, creating situations where victims would wait hours for response while mortality risk increased. Demographic analysis revealed broad impact. Opioid addiction affects individuals with chronic pain dependency, communities experiencing economic distress, and young adults experimenting without awareness of addiction risks. The network's products would have killed across all populations without discrimination. None of these scenarios occurred. Laboratories never completed production. Distribution centers never transferred product. Street dealers never received inventory. Users never consumed lethal synthetic compounds. Emergency systems never faced surge overdoses. Hospitals never activated mass casualty protocols. Families never received overdose death notifications. Federal investigation findings prompted enhanced regulatory oversight of chemical precursors used in synthetic opioid production. Import tracking for key compounds now includes multi-agency verification of end-user legitimacy, pattern analysis to identify systematic procurement by multiple related entities, and international information sharing to detect precursor diversion before accumulation to production significant quantities. Laboratory supply companies now face mandatory reporting requirements for suspicious orders and enhanced penalties for knowing facilitation of diversion. Law enforcement coordination protocols were strengthened for faster response to emerging synthetic opioid operations. Intelligence fusion centers now receive real-time chemical procurement data. Federal task forces maintain rapid response capabilities. International cooperation enables disruption of precursor supply chains at source countries. ATF Trigger prevented the largest coordinated synthetic opioid distribution in federal law enforcement history. 6 manufacturing laboratories dismantled, 114 kilograms of finished fentanyl and analogs seized before distribution, 800,000 individual doses prevented from reaching streets, 2,000 to 5,000 projected deaths averted, 5,000 non-fatal overdoses prevented, 12 metropolitan areas protected from coordinated narcotics flood that would have overwhelmed medical systems and killed thousands. The narcotics were manufactured, tested, packaged, and staged. Distribution infrastructure positioned. Buyers prepared. Dealers notified. Users waiting. Timeline set for 48 hours. Medical examiners would have processed thousands of overdose deaths as lethal synthetics circulated under guise of familiar substances. ATF Trigger's interdiction occurred 36 hours before scheduled distribution. The investigation that began with unusual toxicology findings expanded through 16 months of chemical procurement tracking, financial analysis, international coordination, and surveillance operations that identified the complete manufacturing and distribution network. The operation that shut down 6 laboratories, seized 4 distribution centers, and arrested 132 conspirators required unprecedented coordination across federal agencies, state and local law enforcement, and international partners. Communities remained safe. Emergency medical systems operated at normal capacity. Families did not lose members to overdoses. Medical examiners did not process thousands of preventable deaths. Treatment facilities did not face surge admissions from addiction crises. The catastrophe scheduled for street release in 48 hours never occurred because ATF Trigger stopped the operation while narcotics were still in secured storage, before distribution networks could disperse products beyond recovery, and before users could consume doses that would have killed thousands. The timeline, the coordination, the intelligence fusion across multiple agencies prevented 800,000 doses of synthetic opioids from reaching markets where they would have killed indiscriminately across demographics, age groups, and communities already struggling with substance abuse crisis. The investigation ensured that families who would have lost members to overdoses never faced that tragedy, that emergency responders never faced surge casualties beyond their capacity, and that communities never experienced the compound devastation of thousands of simultaneous overdose deaths. This is a fictional dramatization inspired by federal narcotics interdiction and synthetic opioid enforcement concepts. It does not depict any real operation, individuals, or specific cases. All scenarios, numbers, and details are created for illustrative purposes to demonstrate the investigative methods and coordination used in major drug trafficking prevention operations.